Field Report Number FA0009, Cycle 47. Subject Species, Homo sapiens. Observed individuals deliberately capture and contain smaller organisms within their dwellings, restricting movement and controlling all resource distribution. Despite this clear dominance hierarchy, subjects repeatedly refer to the contained organisms using kinship terminology such as family. Notably, subjects engage in ritualized vocalizations, physical contact, and gift offerings toward these captives, while simultaneously removing their reproductive autonomy. Behavioral contradiction detected. Subjects exhibit emotional dependency on organisms they fully control. Purpose of this paradoxical bonding remains unclear. Humans capture or acquire smaller, non-human organisms and reclassify them as family members, despite maintaining total control over their movement, reproduction, and survival. The contradiction is immediate and unresolved. The human assumes complete authority over the creature's access to food, territory, and medical intervention, yet simultaneously assigns it an emotional status equivalent to offspring or companion. Central Command has noted that in most known systems, dominance hierarchies are clearly labeled and reinforced, but here the humans obscure the hierarchy with affectionate language. The organism is often confined within architectural boundaries, transported against its will, and subjected to surgical modification, yet is addressed with diminutive vocalizations and granted personal identifiers. The human then exhibits distress if the organism fails to reciprocate emotional signals, despite having engineered every aspect of its environment. On our world, bonded entities must consent through synchronized neural exchange. Here, consent appears to be assumed retroactively. The Council has requested clarification on whether this is enslavement or kinship. Current data indicates humans experience both simultaneously, without cognitive disruption. Humans perform repetitive caretaking rituals, such as feeding, grooming, and vocal interaction that mimic parental behavior toward organisms that are not their offspring. These rituals are conducted with high consistency and emotional investment, often exceeding the care humans provide to their own species peers. The human will allocate resources, time, and spatial priority to the organism, preparing specialized nutrition and engaging in tactile maintenance of its exterior surface. Of particular note is the vocal pattern known as baby talk, in which the human alters pitch and syntax to communicate with a being that cannot comprehend the linguistic structure. Despite this, the human reports satisfaction and perceives reciprocal communication. Central Command finds this inefficient, as our species utilizes direct data transfer for cross-species interaction, eliminating ambiguity. Yet humans appear to derive psychological stabilization from these rituals, suggesting the behavior serves internal regulation rather than practical necessity. The organism, in turn, adapts to cues such as tone and routine, creating a feedback loop that the human interprets as affection. The Council has flagged this as a possible example of self-induced emotional simulation with a living prop. Humans allow domesticated organisms to occupy intimate physical spaces, including sleeping areas, while simultaneously enforcing arbitrary behavioral boundaries. The human invites the organism into zones typically reserved for vulnerable states, such as sleep, indicating a high level of perceived trust or dependency. The organism may rest on the same surface, or even in direct contact with the human's body, which would, in most rational systems, imply equal status, or at minimum mutual vulnerability agreements. However, the human abruptly enforces rules that appear inconsistent, prohibiting the organism from accessing certain objects, surfaces, or behaviors without clear logical distinction. For example, an organism may be permitted on one elevated surface, but punished for occupying a similar adjacent surface. Central Command notes the absence of coherent rule structures. Instead, enforcement seems tied to human preference rather than environmental necessity. The organism learns these shifting constraints through repetition and corrective signals, often displaying confusion but eventual compliance. The Council remains uncertain whether this system represents a training protocol or a manifestation of human desire to exert selective control while maintaining emotional closeness.